In this video we will explain Undisputed 2, Last Man Standing. This movie tells the story of a heavyweight champ, being framed for possessing drugs and then sent to a Russian prison. There, he realizes that boxing against the inmate champion is the only way out. Will he be able to free himself from the cruelest prison in Russia? Let's find out in Undisputed 2, Last Man Standing. Undisputed 2, The Last Man Standing begins by showing the atmosphere of the battle between Yuri Boyka and Arkady Davik, which was held in the maximum security prison, Chorny in Russia. The audience seemed excited to watch the mixed martial arts matches by betting on Boyka's victory. With the help of a mob boss, a man named Gaga, Warden Makarov and the prison officials arranged these fights and placed large side bets to make a personal profit, often at the fighter's expense. As usual, Boyka came out victorious and became the only fighter who had never been defeated even in this fight. The scene then switches and shows a former boxing champion, George Chambers, whose career as a professional boxer has faded and relies on his meager popularity for money. After filming a commercial for a liquor product, Chambers then returned to his apartment. Unexpectedly, he turned out to have been framed by someone by slipping a packet of cocaine in his Bible. Because of this, he was immediately arrested by the police for possession of illegal drugs, and he was completely unable to avoid it. Chambers was sentenced to prison and immediately thrown into the Chorny prison in Russia. Arriving there, Chambers was greeted by Markov, who turned out to be a big fan of him. He shares a cell with Stephen Parker, a British junkie in prison. Everyone seemed to be watching Chambers as he walked into the dining hall at lunch. Even so, Chambers seemed relaxed and enjoying his lunch, regardless of how people look at him. Not long after, Yuri Boyka and his men came to the dining hall. The inmates, except for Chambers, immediately stood up when Boyka came, as if he was very respected in prison, even though he was also a prisoner. Seeing Chambers sitting relaxed enjoying his lunch, the arrogant vodka then came to him and tried to confront the former boxing champion. Before the fight between Chambers and Boyka became more intense and would trigger a bigger commotion, the guards immediately intervened. One day Chambers saves Parker, who was being bullied by Boyka's men. After beating up some of Boyka's men who bullied Parker, he gets information from Parker that this prison is controlled by the mafia led by Gaga. It is revealed that Gaga was the one who framed Chambers for possession of the cocaine, which was what I did to get him thrown into Chorny prison, and participated in mixed martial arts matches organized by him against the reigning champion, Yuri Boyka. After successfully paralyzing his opponent until he was helpless, Boyka, knowing that Chambers had witnessed the fight, confronted him from the above ring. But Chambers seemed unresponsive. After the fight, Markov calls Chambers into his room and asks him to join the fight. Because Chambers refused his request, Markov then ordered Chambers to do very heavy physical work, so that he felt his dignity was deliberately undermined by Markov and the guards. Meanwhile, in one corner of the prison, Peker, who is secretly using illegal drugs, is visited by Boyka's men who again bullied him. They then urge Parker to persuade Chambers, so that he is willing to join the fight against Boyka. Not only cornering Parker, but Boyka's men also tried to gang up on Chambers while serving his sentence. After being released from solitary confinement, Gaga approaches Chambers, who tells him that he could have been released sooner if he had agreed to a fight against Boyka, which both Gaga and Markov could arrange for his release. It turned out that Phil, Chambers' manager, had agreed to this and signed a contract with Gaga to arrange Chambers' fight against Boyka. Chambers initially refuses, but after spending time in demeaning physical labor and the prison sewer system, and experiencing firsthand the guards' brutality, he reluctantly agrees. After Chambers finally agreed to fight, both Chambers and Boy could then prepare themselves by training hard, because they thought their opponent was not an ordinary fighter. Chambers still relies on his skills and experience as a boxer. At the same time, Boyka prepares a series of fighting styles that combine a deadly combination of kicks, throws, and grappling, designed to humiliate his opponent in the ring. On the other hand, Boyka's men returned to Parker, who was using illegal drugs. But this time, they didn't bully him and instead asked him to do an important test during the fight between Chambers and Boyka. Finally, the fight between George Chambers, the former boxing champion, against Yuri Boyka, the defending champion, began. The two of them started the fight passionately, with the desire to beat each other. However, during the fight, Chambers was surprised by the many variations of Boyka's attacks that were launched repeatedly, because he didn't show these attacks in the previous fight. However, Chambers managed to fend off Boyka's attack, and made it through the first round by keeping his distance, staying calm, and providing a combination of punches that was quite painful when he found an opening. On the other hand, Parker, who acted as Chambers' cornerman, was visited by one of Boyka's men who gave him a bottle of mineral water mixed with anesthetic, which would later be given to Chambers. Actually, Parker was reluctant to harm Chambers, but he had no other choice because Boyka's men threatened him. Chambers gulped a small amount of water from the Boyka. As a result, he lost the fight. Chambers then wakes up and is told by Krot that Parker had mixed his drink with drugs. Chambers, feeling very angry, then went to his cell to demand an explanation from Parker. However, he is surprised that Parker had hanged himself feeling guilty, and finds an apology letter written by him. After learning that Parker did this on purpose because he was threatened by Boyka's men, Chambers went to Boyka and blamed him for the drug incident. But Boyka denied the accusations made by Chambers, because he had never committed cowardly acts such as cheating his victory in a very disgraceful way. Chambers, annoyed with all the oppression Markov and the guards had on him, and the other inmates, then beat Markov because he feels he will be released soon after the fight with Boyka, but Markov instead sentenced Chambers to a more severe sentence by tying him to a water tower pole in a snowy cold and being beaten by prison guards. On the other hand, it turns out that Boycott did not know anything about the actions of his subordinates who drugged Chambers. He then asked his henchmen about it because Boyka highly values sportsmanship. He killed two of his and who had deliberately drugged Chambers, regardless of their reasons for doing so for his victory. Elsewhere, Phil goes to Gaga and asks him for some money so he can escape overseas because he no longer wants to take care of Chambers and his doomed career. Gaga handed Phil suitcase of cash, but then orders one of his men to kill him. Back in prison, in the cold snowy weather, Chambers, who had resigned himself to his fate, was visited by other prisoners who cared so much for him. They covered him and fed him warm food, so that he would no longer be shivering from the cold. Apparently, the actions of the prisoners sparked Markov's anger. He then gathered the inmates in the cold, and threatened the inmates, who had helped Chambers. However, a surprising thing happened when all the inmates came forward and defended Chambers, so Markov and his men did not move. Knowing that Markov mistreated Chambers, Gaga then went to Chambers and apologized about drug, because he has always emphasized sportsmanship in every fight. Chambers then demanded a rematch to ensure his release, and demanded the fight be conducted in a sporting manner. With the rematch set, Chambers and Boyka went back to training hard. This time, Chambers gets mixed martial arts training from Krot, a former soldier and the one who trains Boyka in fighting style. After rehearsal, Chambers came to Krot in his cell, and asked about the little girl plastered on his cell wall. Krot said that the little girl was his niece whom he had not seen in 19 years. He then told Chambers why he was thrown into prison in the first place. At that time, his brother committed a robbery, and he was made a scapegoat. Unable to stand the oppression by the guards, he fought back and accidentally killed one of the guards. While trying to escape from prison, the guard shot him in the leg, and he is now paralyzed and has to sit in a wheelchair forever. Krot then told Chambers his real name, which was Nikolai. Before their match began, everyone seemed very excited because they had been waiting for it. They placed large bets for Boyka and Chambers, because both of them can be winners. It looks like Gaga and Markov have occupied the best seats, enjoying the fight, and Krot, who is now Chambers' coach, seems to be at the side of the ring. The fight was fierce and intense, with flurries of combinations, grapples, and throws traded between the two great fighters. Because both of them have great fighting abilities, the fight lasted quite a long time. Eventually, Chambers realized that Boycott would never give up, and had excellent physical resistance, which did not rule out the possibility that he would be able to take him down if the fight lasted too long. To win the fight, Chambers changed his strategy, and managed to lock Boyka's movement with the technique taught by Krot, and managed to end the fight by breaking Boy's leg, which victory proved Chambers had not lost his fighting ability and established himself as an undisputed new champion of the prison. According to the agreement, Chambers was released from prison after successfully winning the battle against Yuri Boyka. Gaga then handed a briefcase of money to Chambers as a gift. But Chambers later used the money to buy Krot's freedom. The film ends by showing Chambers pushing Krot to the train station to meet his estranged niece in a happy reunion.